Oh, can you hear me now?
Good. They're all too
Hello?
young.
It's probably fine. This will work. Everything is working as it should, except for that one thing, which always happens.
Okay,
I'm
Mark.
assuming that it's gonna work now, so I'm just gonna not even, check on it. It'll be fine. I clicked the thing. It's fine. It works now. Duh. It works now, right, computer? Anyway, we're going to be talking to Dr. Katie Schmidt today. And by we, I mean me and Mandy, who you may know as Dr. Mandy. But this should be fun. It should be very interesting. Before we get into that, make sure that you're following. Make sure that you follow the Twitch channel. Make sure that you're following social media. Make sure that you're following everywhere. Because that's the only way you're going to catch all this stuff. There's streams, there's social media posts, there's projects, there's all kinds of things going on. There's a rating system. If you want to know about it, you got to be on the newsletter. You could volunteer. You got to follow the socials. You got to come to the streams. You got to be connected. So make sure you're connected. But that's
Speaking
enough.
Before we go into the interview, sorry everybody. So chat, we have an open position for a summer intern in data science this summer, hosting. So if you or someone you know might be interested in that, if you're in a PhD program or undergrad and interested in availability type things with machine learning,
Sorry.
check it out. What?
Your mic is acting up, love. Sorry. It's cutting in and out. I don't know if you can just use your laptop one or what. I think it's the same thing that happened before. I think.
Yeah, if it's doing, I can probably fix it. Let me.
Yeah, just a sec, chat. Of course, that just starts when we're doing the thing, but that's fine. Mandy was saying there's a job posting. If you didn't hear it, you heard most of it. You heard her chat. But you should look if you have an interest and the knowledge and expertise to actually work on this.
Okay. Am I better now?
Yes.
Not okay. It does that if I put my headphones on after I get in the meeting, then it does very bad things to my audio until I switch the device manually. So even though it's on the right device, it's just not. So yay, technology. Anyway, you mostly heard me, chat. Go to the website if you want to do data science with us. So yeah, so now we can get to the interview. Sorry, go ahead, Bob.
All right. Well, today's guest is Dr. Katie Schmidt. I may have advertised it as being Dr. Katie yesterday because I realized I've never used her last name. I've only ever known you as Katie. But we used to live close by and we used to hang out and we have played Mario Kart. It's been a while, but hey, Katie, how's it going?
Hey, Bob. Good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that you're living the Midwest life instead of the California life, but...
Do you miss it? Do you miss 16 inches of snow?
I don't. That was one of the things that a lot of people are like, oh, I live in California, or at least where we live, it doesn't snow very, basically ever. I've never seen it snow. And people are like, oh, I have to go to Tahoe. I miss the snow. No, I don't have to worry about cleaning off my car. It's fantastic. So...
That's
for anyone
fair.
that lives
There's
in the Midwest.
Way too many people in the Bay Area, though. To be honest, I was
imagine
overwhelmed
being
by
like,
the people.
"Oh, we got to go find snow."
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah, there was one day where it snowed on the hills. So the hills all around us had snow on them. People were out taking pictures. That's how rare it is that on the actual ground, nothing. But we're it's like we're in Colorado and took pictures. So
Nice.
Yeah, but I agree. Too many people here. So, even if you don't like
just
snow.
to give a little bit more context and justification to Dr. Katie. I'm gonna
Dr.
just keep
Katie.
calling you Katie. I call Katie she's one of my good friends from the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, as Mark would say. And so when I used to work there, Katie was actually my mentor when I started as a postdoc. She has a PhD in applied mathematics and is now moved up in the lab and is a group leader in a part of the lab called CASC, which is computing and something computing.
Center for Applied Scientific Computing.
There you go.
Big
Which is a
computers.
prestigious part. Yes, yes, big computers, big fun, lots of uncertainty quantification, and we're very lucky to have Katie talking to us today. So thank you again for coming to talk to us.
Thanks for having me. Not only do we get to hang out, but I get to talk about my work and all the cool stuff we're doing. So good stuff all around.
Right. Right. So before we get to the cool stuff that we're doing and talking about all the science and whatnot, I think people would be interested to know you like games, right?
I do. In fact, definitely did some gaming parties over COVID. So I think we did do Mario Kart. I'm terrible at Mario Kart, which is one reason why I'm not playing today, because that would just be comically distracting. But I'm actually decent at Smash Brothers.
Nice. Yeah, I remember I just kept dying and falling off immediately because you all were way too good for me.
Yeah, I think at one point, even though I still wasn't good enough to win, it was eventually like, okay, we have to gang up on her, and I felt very accomplished that there was the lizard must die edict during some of them. So
Someday we'll have to have you versus my brother. He's very good too.
He is.
yeah, I don't know. Considering that our other friends who were also quite good and also Bob were still like stomping my face in the end, I think that it wouldn't be too much of a challenge. But
Those fun times. And you also like to play other classic games, right?
yeah. So I think more of my gaming years were when I was much younger and never quite made the big jump to modern gaming. So I still do have a lot of vintage games. So I have like 50 something Sega Genesis games.
Oh, wow.
Not all of them are winners. Like there are definitely some like, I'm not sure why I own this, but yeah. But I think my big favorites were probably all the Disney games. Like I loved Aladdin, I loved The Lion King. What are some of the other ones I liked? Pitfall, Lost Vikings, Ten Head. Actually, Cool Spot was one of my favorites, which was the little 7-Up spot with sunglasses, and he went on adventures, and I loved that one too. So,
Was that like a branded game?
it was. I think it was just supposed to be for maybe advertisement, kind of like how Transformers and My Little Ponies were just supposed to like sell us stuff. I think this was just like if you play this game, you will buy 7-Up. I don't know that worked for me, but I enjoyed the actual game and the platforming. There was also the Chester Cheeto. There was also one of those branded games, but I didn't have that one. So I think it was like they were trying to get you to buy junk food with these games. So
Those like corporate branded weirdware video games are so interesting. I'm not into retro gaming stuff, so I basically only know like the ones that everyone makes jokes about. But I know like the Burger King one is pretty funny, and there's like a old Pepsi Man one that's like kind of weird. That's funny that the game was actually good. I don't know if that's common. I don't think it is.
I don't think it is either. It was actually a pretty decent game. And I think also at the end, if you beat it, I don't know if you had to beat it on the highest difficulty, but at the end they would say, write to this address and we'll send you like free 7-Up stuff. And a few years ago, someone on Twitter is like, where's my 7-Up stuff? And they actually sent it to them. So if you do have a Cool Spot game, you might still be able to get some free 7-Up swag.
Nice.
I hope it's the original stuff they bought just sitting in a warehouse all these years.
I hope so too. Actually, I think it was supposed to be you got a little figurine, I think is what that was. But yeah. For my more
That's-
modern gaming take, I was telling Amanda about this not too long ago. The one that I think everybody's sleeping on, because I do like more like quirky puzzle games these days. I think everyone's sleeping on Piku Niku. I don't know if you've heard of this.
I have not.
I
Is
think
it collaborative?
they do have a collaborative option, although the solo story mode is where the magic truly is. So the story is amazing. It is the graphics are kind of sort of low budget because it is an indie game. All of the dialogue is just written out, but the story is amazing. The puzzle game is fun, and I believe what did they describe it as? I've seen it described as something like charmingly dystopian or something like that. And yeah, the humor is top notch. I have never laughed that much playing a game just from the story. It's fantastic.
Nice.
It
All right,
fun. You'll have to
sounds
play
like
it,
Mandy
Bob.
wants to talk about science, but can we just appreciate this food that I just got from that block?
Yeah, it
Oh
looks
my
delicious.
goodness.
Little meatballs with like, I guess, I don't know, salsa?
Dipped.
It's got like pita bread. I don't know what
Okay,
this
yeah,
is.
I thought those were quesadillas, but maybe it is
Oh.
pita bread. Oh, but with salsa,
Yeah,
quesadillas make
maybe.
sense.
Yeah. I don't know. That just looks really delicious. I would actually eat that. But now baby Luigi eats it. Anyway, you can talk about science. Sorry. I just thought that looked
Science,
really
you know.
And we'll get to it when we get to it. Chad is here for the food anyway. Um, so Katie, you're a scientific researcher, right, at the Lawrence Livermore National Lab. So what's it like being a scientific researcher?
Oh, that's a tough question. So it's one of those people kind of ask what your day to day looks like. I think it's changed a little bit since I became a group leader. I feel like I have to talk to more people now. So it's a lot of
Is that
check in.
good or bad?
Good and bad, because I don't know, sometimes I feel like I make more of a difference when I like have interactive meetings. It's like I have talked to someone and we have achieved something, but it also means less time to sit around and think and make progress on actual research. Which I think that was a really big adjustment in grad school when I shifted from taking classes to actually doing research all the time, where it's a lot different when you have to like sit around and think about things kind of just in isolation, and you're the one contemplating this problem and the rest of the world just sort of moving around without you, and they're all taking classes. So really training yourself to like have the discipline to sit and think deeply and to dive into things is hard. And I guess that's still something that I work on, with also having the day really fragmented. But it's a lot of sitting and thinking about things. It's a lot of reading papers. And then my favorite is when I really get into the zone and I'm like determined to figure out a problem, where it's like I will work on the code. I will try different things. I will get mad that it isn't working. I will go and read more papers to try to get ideas. I will talk to people to try to get ideas. So I think that's kind of both the frustration and the high of getting to do this kind of research, where you just really dive in and get sucked into a problem.
Right, I love a problem like that. Then you can't even eat or do anything else until you solve the issue you're having.
Yep, exactly. It's like being in the zone.
Right. Is that your favorite thing about being a researcher? Or do you have something else about your job that you really like?
Oh, that's tough. I like that, and also sort of the synergy that happens when you end up on a team that works really well together. And it feels like you can like just almost that you're accomplishing all of these things together. So like we've both paired up with some material scientists that just have a really good outlook on the kind of work that we do, and we learn from them, they learn from us. And so just really experiencing that kind of camaraderie and progress and the ability to get things done, that's one of my favorite parts too.
Right. There's nothing better than a scientist who thinks the math you're doing is magic, because I had one of those. Especially there was one who was on my committee in my PhD, and it just like energized me every time I went to talk to him. I was like bouncing off the walls because they're just like amazed at what you're doing. Those material scientists did that too, to some degree, and it's really fun.
Absolutely. And I think even getting involved in the kind of work that we do has even changed the careers of some of them that have been involved with us. So that kind of makes me also feel like I have an impact and my work is important and people care.
Also, just like you think you've led them towards different directions or more usable math or
So things that they weren't thinking about doing before, they're now like making their careers out of doing appropriate
mm,
data science. So they've learned things from us and now they're like, oh, I'm going to go use Gaussian processes or Bayesian calibration and I'm going to get like really good uncertainty quantification that means things to the point where one of our papers was even selected as an editor's choice for like the Journal of Applied Physics. Like people care about this and the fact that you're doing really principled research and doing things the right way, people care about that.
right. So one last question about your career in
Sure.
general at the lab. Do you think that there's anything that people might misunderstand about what you do as a researcher?
Oh, that's interesting. So one thing that sort of relates to me working at the lab is I think it was really difficult even for a lot of even my undergrad professors to think about jobs out in the world that related to math. And that was an opinion I sort of had also as a student who was majoring in math and things like that. Where it's like, oh, your options if you really want to get a career in math are basically to be an actuary or to be a teacher. And
Right.
this, yeah. Did you have similar thoughts on that too, or?
Well, I did an internship in my undergrad as an actuary sort of thing, and I hated it, and that's what the ick was about, not the teaching. But
Oh yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, obviously that's the thing that is presented as like your first line of math career options.
Absolutely. And so even just figuring out that there's this other career path where you can do math and you can do statistics and you can apply it to real world problems. So like one of the jokes for someone I was in grad school with who was working on like cancer modeling, or no, I think it was actually HIV modeling. And her brother described her work as she's curing AIDS with her computer. And yeah, so it was just that idea that the work you do can matter and can make a difference and can lead to things that relate to the real world. So whether it's biological modeling, whether it's material science modeling, whether it's all these problems that they have in national security related to the lab, that learning to do math and use computers is something that actually can let you look into other areas of science. So I think that's something that a lot of people misunderstand when they think about working at the lab. They think it's just physicists or just people who are chemists or things like that. But really, there's a lot of room for people who do math and stats, and I think a big need for people who do math and stats. And we get to learn
Well,
about all the cool science.
right. I That's my favorite part. So I think a lot of people think you've mentioned it in passing, but I'd like to drill down on the idea. You People think when they hear math that you're like solving equations or something
Right,
all
or
the
like
time.
doing times tables or something.
Yeah, like at a blackboard with chalk and or like a beautiful mind sort of
Mhm.
things. Can you explain a little bit more how a math career kind of goes these days? Just a
Sure.
tiny bit.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite jokes from my advisor is I guess one time someone asked him, well, what does math research even mean? And he was feeling a bit ornery that day and actually said, well, to this person, which this is not serious to be clear, but he's like, you pick a really big number because all the smaller numbers have been taken and you just learn everything you can about that number. So that is something that one of my friends and I still joke about, because sometimes it seems like research is just like these little baby steps as opposed to the like big problems that people tackled in the past. So we sometimes jokingly say all of the smaller numbers have been taken.
That's
But
pretty good.
yes, so it does come up in that context. But yeah, I don't know that it's necessarily, because like a lot of people have these ideas about math being like, oh, we calculate areas of triangles and big shapes. So I think
Integrals.
that integrals, we're just sitting doing times tables, things like that. But I guess what we're doing is really saying that we're oftentimes cooperating with physicists or other scientists, and they have these models that are either about disease or they're about, how lasers fire off or something like that. And then we're saying, well, how does this relate to the real world, and adding the extra mathematical knowledge behind that. So this relates to kind of word problems you used to work on. So if they're like, oh, well, this is how the postage grows as your package gets bigger, and you're like, we're going to model that with our y equals mx plus b. It's kind of like that. It's kind of like your line of best fit, except for much, much bigger problems and much bigger equations, much bigger formulas, and then trying to figure out how to make those things fit. So I guess where the actual math research comes in is a lot of times for these types of models, or for how to figure out how to make these things fit, sometimes the problems are so different that nobody's figured out how to exactly model something like that before. So we've got y equals mx plus b completely figured out, but maybe there's something new that needs to be there. And that's kind of where the math research comes in, where it's either a way to make that faster or a way to model something we've never seen before. So that's kind of at least the type of math research I do. There are completely other areas. So people who study and try to make faster the way that like computers do math, that's numerical analysis, because computers do math differently than people, and that's a whole other area. And then there's also the area of pure math, where it's people sitting around doing proofs, which are sometimes important to the people doing applied math. So we appreciate them, and they don't get funded nearly as much as the applied people do. So it's hard to describe math research in just one way, but I think mine is mostly related to all of the modeling and all of the uncertainty quantification associated with that.
Yeah, well, I do think as an outside person who just, hears what Mandy's doing at Real Good and sees what data scientists like you to work on, it's really interesting to me that other scientists are allowed to just do their own analysis. Because I feel like there's a lot of science that happens where the scientists, they know they're a really good material scientist, or they work with whatever, lasers, physics, whatever. And then they do their research, they do their experiment, and they get some information, and then they look at it and they're like, I guess this means black holes exist. But they have no, if a data scientist were to look at that research, they would look and be like, oh my God, like what, what did you do to your data? How did you arrive at this? It feels to me like almost every science benefits from, the kind of stuff that you guys do and have to offer. But maybe I'm not giving other scientists enough credit. It just seems funny to me that you don't necessarily understand what the outcome of an experiment or of what research means just because you are knowledgeable and an expert enough to actually do the research and understand how to figure out the problem you're working on or whatever.
Totally agree, and that's really interesting to see kind of the standards that show up in different fields. Like the material scientists, it's like, here's our data, here's our model, they touch at some point, so done, check, great, we did it, mission accomplished. Whereas mathematicians and statisticians we would like to see the model going through the cloud of data points. That does come up a lot, where it's just like, what were you thinking? You need our help, we're here to help you. It's actually come up a lot in AI, where a lot of the AI and machine learning tools are so easy to use in terms of onboarding. that now everyone just kind of uses them but doesn't understand, oh, you need to make sure that your testing and training data sets are really distinct, or they pick architectures that don't make sense and just kind of plow through. And there are entire fields of papers out there that are talking about like the reproducibility crisis in AI, the data leakage problems in AI. So it still happens, even though techniques are becoming more accessible in some ways. This still has a big problem of people just kind of charging forward. Just to,
I think what. Go ahead. Sorry.
Just to keep you awake at night, things to worry about.
Yep. I think one other big thing that people misunderstand about math is they think so exact that there's like a right answer. And I describe it over and over again like it's an art, not a science, which is kind of a funny way to describe a science career. Is that your experience as well?
Absolutely. And one of my friends who teaches undergrad modeling, so she teaches undergraduates like I think there's several levels of it, but that first level where it's their first exposure to learning how to model things, they are often very frustrated because they're like, but what is the answer? And it's like, I don't know, you have data, you have to figure it out. There's not one way to do it. And I think that's also why it's good for mathematicians and statisticians to talk to each other, because maybe we're thinking about something in a different way and getting someone else's take on it. And sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not. I think also sometimes we reach things that are basically equivalent, like in our field, splines and Gaussian processes under some conditions kind of give you the same answer and the same UQ. I think that there is never really one answer, and the quote that everyone throws around related to modeling is all models are wrong, but some are useful. So that's mostly, it's never going to be perfect, but sometimes it's good enough to help us figure out what's happening in the real world. It's a faithful enough representation that it actually lets us come to meaningful conclusions or model things we haven't seen before.
Absolutely. I made a video on that quote itself because I agree.
Yeah, I've heard Mandy say that more than once.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of our favorites.
So obviously you've had quite a journey in your career to go from started out as baby student to where you've gone now. What would you say maybe has been the biggest hurdle you've had to overcome to become a successful scientist?
Oh,
such as yourself?
That's interesting. So I think one of the biggest adjustments that I had was actually going from grad school lifestyle to like 9 to 5 lifestyle. We're a little bit more flexible these days, especially with like a little bit more hybrid work and things like that. But especially when I started, where grad school is kind of just you work when you work when you have inspiration. And sometimes that ends up into not having great healthy boundaries. But, if it's not happening today, that's okay. You just come back tomorrow and try again. And it was pretty tough to go to a 9 to 5, you're in the office, and research needs to happen between the hours of 9 to 5. And if you don't protect your weekends, then you're just never going to stop working. So that was a bit of an adjustment. I don't know. Did you have the same experience, Amanda? Or...
Not really, because my brain works a little bit differently. I mean, I'm always trying to work the 9 to 5. I've always been trying to force myself to do that, but I don't stop when I get a problem, like we talked about before, regardless of other things. The only time when I've had to stop lately is now that we have a baby. Now you kind of have to stop, but my brain doesn't turn off the problem when the clock ends. So, I mean, I'm kind of weird, I guess.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's just learning to try to not do stuff all the time. But I also feel like getting over the guilt of just like my brain is not working today and I've been staring at my computer screen and nothing is happening, but I'm charging time for it. Here we are. Yeah,
I guess for me on that, the big difference was measuring success
Mm,
is different because like when you're in undergrad or earlier years, you like finish your homework, you finish milestones. But
mhm.
in higher levels of math research, it's like, well, I worked my ass off and nothing worked. And so you've
Yes.
made no progress and like you did put in the work and technically that's research, but until you finish something it feels really bad.
Yeah, have you ever did you read PhD comics when you were going through your grad school?
Yeah.
I think one of my favorites is when he shows up to his advisor's office and he's like, "Well, I tried this and it didn't work, and tried this, it didn't work, tried this, didn't work." And the advisor's like, "Oh, so you did nothing." And he's like, "By way of something, which is not nothing."
Yeah, but my advisor made me feel more like I did nothing.
But then you had really great mentorship and when you were a postdoc and you did not feel that way, I hope.
That's
Like,
true. That's true.
yeah. It's hard not to feel that way even internally. Like, even if someone's not telling you you did nothing. I had a similar experience with a problem I was working on just this week, um, where I'm trying to do a spline fitting algorithm where it's picking where the knots are placed. And it does pretty well, but it has some tuning parameters. And we're trying to make this package that's completely just push button, completely automated for physicists to use. And the request was, well, let's make these two tuning parameters completely like just optimize them. And I cannot find a good metric that works. Like I've put in metrics to optimize. I've tried like AIC, BIC. I've tried GCV. None of them produce good results. Like I will get an answer, I will get an optimum value, but it just does not work. And so I feel like I spent all of this time coding and being like, I'm gonna get it, I'm gonna get it, I'm gonna get it. And I'm like, well, I'm out of ideas. So that's on the back burner, and I'm still kind of thinking about that. And I'm like, man, it's gonna be weird when I go to my next meeting, and it's like I did nothing by way of something, which is not nothing, and it's still the same answer.
Right. Okay, well, let's back up like 20 steps here. Can you tell us what a spline is?
Oh, okay. So, for those of you who may have had linear algebra, you think about things as a linear
Let's say
combination.
they don't know
Oh
linear
gosh.
algebra. Let's say that this is a TED talk and we're
Okay,
telling
sure.
people what a spline is. Okay.
Okay. So we'll do it in levels. We'll start low and then go up a little bit.
Perfect.
So a spline is much like if you've heard Amanda talk about, or Dr. Mandy talk about Gaussian processes, where you have a bunch of data and you're trying to say, like, if I were going to draw my magic marker through the data, what would that look like? And splines are another way to do that. So it's another way of saying we have this data, we want to like basically draw this line through, but it's a mathematical way of doing it. So your computer spits something out, you don't actually take your pen and draw it, but that's more or less what the method is doing. We have this data, and we're trying to figure out what does it look like. What does it look like if we were to do kind of a y equals mx plus b line fit? We're now just like drawing it through, but it doesn't have to be a line. So for those of you who've had linear algebra, splines are a little different than the Gaussian processes in that it is instead of a linear combination of vectors, it is a linear combination of basis functions. So instead of getting out a vector, you get out a function. But so that's like a little bit of a behind the curtain of math, as opposed to just, but the thing that actually ends up happening is you take your magic marker and you draw it through data in just a way that the computer figures it out.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. We also had a chat question. Pre-collegiate math curricula often teach statistics and calculus as entirely separate classes. Why is that? It seems like there's a lot more overlap than people tend to think about. It's strange that that's the norm. Do you have thoughts on that, Katie?
Yeah, so this is my completely uninformed opinion because I did not have any math education training, so I don't know how this originally was created. But I
But you
think
were a teacher, right?
I was, so that is actually quite funny. I spent 2 years teaching at the Arkansas, what is it, ASMSA, it's the Arkansas School for Math, Science, and the Arts. So it's like their version of the Math and Science School. It was something I did after my master's degree. But since it is a sort of public-private hybrid, I did not have to have a teaching degree, so I have never taken a math education class. But I'd like to think that they learned something. So if any of you guys are out there that have had me back in my Ms. Schmidt as opposed to Dr. Schmidt days, there's still, I'm sure, some of them running around. Hopefully they are all now very successful mathematicians out in the world somewhere. But yeah, so my uneducated in the sense of have not taken any math education classes. I think that a lot of early math is really just about building the foundation. And that's likely why math and statistics are separated. So learning the foundations of calculus help you figure out sort of the deeper things about statistics. Kind of like how we originally start doing times tables, and then we start doing algebra, and then algebra ends up being important in calculus. And yes, they're all related, but it's kind of the building on each other before we're ready to bring it all together.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that teaching statistics can be either really, really boring, like for the student, or as an undergrad experience, or it can be I finally figure out why math is important in the real world and how math relates to everything I see around me and how it's good at analysis. So it can go either way. It's either the class that grabs them or the class that just makes them say absolutely not.
I guess my follow-up to that is, would you keep the curricula if it were up to you? I know this is a wild speculation problem because it's not up to us at all. But in this age of AI, would you change the base math curriculum?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I haven't thought about that. I don't know that it really matters. So if you're actually going to do the math by yourself, I think it's still important to learn the basis for it. It's kind of like when trying to learn a new method, a lot of times we can get around having to really understand it deeply by saying, oh, we used a package. But we understand it so much better if we can actually code it ourselves. And I think it's the same thing. So the idea that you have to learn the basics and understand it deeply. And I don't know how AI really changes that. It can maybe help you through a homework problem if it gets smart enough to do that or is trained well enough to do that. But actually, I don't know how that would really change the basis of the curriculum. I can't immediately think of ideas for that. Maybe
That's
it helps
okay.
with... Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna transition on. So if you have another thought, please go for it.
I was going to say maybe it helps with coding, or maybe coding is done differently, but which is kind of related to applied math. But I'm not sure. Even the AI for coding is still in early days. I'm not sure we're ready to like include that in, for example, like high school computer science. Let's learn Python curriculum. I'm not sure we're there yet.
Right. I guess the thing that I would add is just like general, like I would replace one of these things that we're doing to talk about the machine learning itself. Since people are
Mm,
going to be interacting with the AIs, it's better if they at least know like or have seen like good bad examples of this and have maybe done something. I mean, there's enough user friendly things that I think people could, like high school students could just get integrated on something easily. Like I think that is more helpful maybe than calculus. Not saying that I didn't use calculus, because I use calculus a ton, but only as a math major. But I feel like everyone is going to be using it, this sort of information about AI, in no matter whether you're a math person or not.
that's a really good point. So thinking about like demystifying AI a little bit in addition to like using it or learning how to use it, because in some
Right.
ways if you understand how it works, it's less magic, and it can maybe make you less or like more skeptical and more cautious about the answers that it's giving you. So,
Right. That was one of my hopes, at least. So, well, we'll see if that's true. So, do you have any advice for someone who's just starting out in their career, who's maybe thinking about going to school to be a mathematician, of how to be successful in their career and how to get maybe to a position like you are in your career?
so I think it kind of depend. My advice kind of depends on if you're planning on ending after undergraduate, or if you're thinking graduate school. So if you're actually saying, I want my undergrad and then done, I want to go and have a job, definitely look for programs that have an applied bent, where you're actually learning practical skills. You're going to walk away with portfolios of projects you've done. That's going to make you way more marketable than if you took a lot of classes with proofs. Like, still, that can be a good indicator of like you're able to think, you're able to do some of the work that they have in mind. But a lot of times, being able to show that you have those practical skills, that's a great thing to do for your college career. If you are thinking grad school, definitely get those classes with proofs. You will need it for the deeper understanding of things, and you will get a lot of your practical skills as more on-the-job training when you start doing research and things like that. So yeah, it kind of depends on which path you have in mind for yourself. It's okay to start something and then change. But I've seen a lot of really cool emerging new majors that are leaning toward applied math or applied statistics. And I think that really helps you get launched into the real world. It shows that you worked on real world problems and you're ready to start doing a job for them.
I want to leave space for Bob. You have any questions?
About
No is an acceptable answer.
right now, no, I'm just listening.
Okay.
Just,
I just want you to feel involved.
I'm here. Don't worry. I will jump in and make jokes if I see one.
Just herding some ostriches and taking in all the information.
Yeah, you're not doing very good in this. This
It's
race.
an endurance race. I'm not supposed to win. I'm just supposed to make it to the end.
You're beating the ostriches. Well, maybe not that
barely.
ostrich. Oh yeah, the elephants aren't even moving, so you're definitely beating them.
There you go.
We're fine. I don't know how long this is supposed to go. I feel like I'm running out of time here.
Until the ostriches give up.
3.
Oh, it does say through. Crap. Oh no, that's the end. I messed up. That's too slow. What? Bowser just materialized. Anyway.
And it's nighttime.
I do not have any questions about this, nor do I have any thoughts on math curriculum.
Okay, well, the thing we're about to launch into is even more technical, so I just wanted to give you
Hey, I know stuff.
Opportunity before
I'll have good questions.
On ramp into the project that I haven't even been telling you about. So Real Good AI has been working with the Lawrence Livermore National Lab through the way of Katie's project that she's working on there. And I was hoping first you could give us just like a little synopsis about the project.
Absolutely. And what I like about this project is I think it is almost like kind of a little bit philosophical, and so it is a little bit TED Talky in its description. So I think it's not like we're getting too deep into the weeds of splines and will be understandable. A lot of this is related to AI ML and if we can trust it. So specifically looking at, getting into the weeds for one quick minute, surrogate models, so things that emulate really big models. So we have these big computer models that might take days and days to run. We want to replace it with something lighter and faster that is often of the equivalent of we're just drawing our magic marker through our data points, that is going to be very close to what that computer code does. So a lot of times that drawing the marker through the data points ends up being either an AI or ML type of model. But we usually just get that answer. We don't get the range of possible answers for what it's spitting out. So, for example, if they say the answer is 5, we're like, okay, great. But if like the answer is 5 and it's either between 4 and 6, we're like, okay, we feel good about that. But if it's like the answer is 5 and it's between negative 773 and 2 million, we do not feel as good about that. So it's a similar idea where we're like, we want to know that we can trust these AI methods. And then we tack on these error bars to say it's kind of between here and here. But there are so many different ways of doing that, and they do not give the same answers. So we're trying to figure out which of these, this is where we think the AI answer should fall, those kind of ranges or those error bars attached to it. We're trying to figure out which of those we can trust by starting with some simple examples where we kind of know the answer and seeing how well we're able to recover it.
Right. And so just to back up for 1 second, I've been saying this around to people, but it's good for them to hear both of us saying it independently. So you mentioned this very quickly, and I want to really harp on it that uh, actually these are to use machine learning in order to get computational efficiency. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So one of the things Lawrence Livermore is known for are these big giant computers. And a lot of that comes from physical things we want to make models for. And so we have, they even call them multi-physics codes. So it's just like even some of the things that we've both worked on with the material scientists. One of the ways that you can measure material strength is an experiment where you take a cylinder and throw it against a wall and it kind of deforms, and how it squashes gives you some idea of the material strength. But if you're not doing that actual experiment, you can simulate that with a computer code. So you make like this very complicated model and all this mesh together and how it deforms and all the physics behind it. That takes a very long time to run. And if we need to, for whatever reason, do some kind of math technique where we have to do a bunch of evaluations of the model, we want to see a bunch of squash cylinders coming out, then that's going to take so much time that we want something that is kind of a lighter, faster approximation of that. And that's where a lot of these AI models come in, where it's like, here's the data, figure out what I should be, here's the input, figure out what the output should be, with the big box with the question mark is kind of in the middle. And that's where the AI comes in. And if it does a really good job approximating the really big fancy computer code, then we're able to put that in as a replacement and say, this is good enough. We can use this as sort of a substitute or a surrogate, which is why we call it a surrogate model or an emulator. Put that in, and then we can get inputs, we can get outputs, and we get something in the middle that is much, much faster than the thing we ran on the big computer.
And so you're getting some error, but also you're getting like and on the order of I'm trying to remember an example that I've done, but it's the models can be like many orders of magnitude faster. Like it might take a week to run the computer simulation, and it might take tenths of a second to do the emulator.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point, that there's kind of no free lunch, that it's not going to be perfect. It's not like, well, we should have just never modeled this with physics to begin with. Like, we are losing something when we do the approximation. But if we get close enough or we get good enough, then we can use it as a substitute, even with the error, because the computational savings are so good.
Right. And so your project's taking and looking at that error and saying, is this acceptable? Are we okay here? Or are we not?
Yeah, exactly. And saying, like, is that error acceptable? And do we do a good job deciding what that error is? Like, being able to say, this is the difference, when you don't necessarily know. So a lot of times when you're training an AI model out in the real world, you don't necessarily know what the truth is. Like, it's some function. Like, there's no function that you can analytically write out that is like sort cat and dog pictures. We don't have something that just, is able to look at the picture and analytically says, oh, this clearly must be a cat. There's no mathematical formula for that. So a lot of times it's just kind of trying to figure things out. And yeah, so that's the same thing with this emulator, where it's like we're not sure what the correct answer is. We know there's probably some error with the truth, so we want to actually make sure that we can trust the bounds that are being put on that.
So can you give us a specific example about why you would want bounds? I know you and I both talk about this all the time, why we need uncertainty quantification. We're just like, you can't trust it unless you know how off you are. Do you have a specific reason you think that, or is this just a feeling?
So it's kind of like the same idea of the answer is the number 5 that I gave you. Like, how much do we trust that number 5? Like, and it depends on what that 5 stands for too. I sort of jokingly say that like it doesn't really matter if Google PageRank is wrong, but it matters if you have like a problem of national security. So it depends on what that 5 is being used for, but it's like, how much do we trust that answer that's coming out of whatever AI? So if you've typed in something and even asking like an LLM to like asking ChatGPT, like, where's the closest bus stop? How much you trust it would depend on like error bars that come out of that, which we're not necessarily talking about language. We're talking about specific numbers, but the answer is 5. How sure are we that that answer is 5? And if you have to run and make decisions based on that, especially for Lawrence Livermore types of big impact, big security types of problems, how confident do you feel taking that answer of 5 to your boss? And if it is like, oh, it's between 4.999 and 5.0001, we're like, okay, I can tell my boss the answer is 5, and then we're very confident about it. But if it's like between 0 and 5 million, but the answer is 5, I would feel a lot worse about going to my boss and saying, yes, please make national security decisions based on this 5 that came out of my AI model.
Oh, another thing, and I'll just say the word, and maybe you can explain it for us, is forward propagation, right?
Right. So forward propagation is the idea that you have some uncertainty on some input to a model. So like if you had your, so you think you have your big question mark box and you're putting things in and you're getting things out. If you're not sure about the things going in, you can, like, say from your range or say from a like normal distribution or something like that, you can draw samples from that and say, this is where our uncertainty is. So we kind of get a bunch of different answers based on where those bounds are, and then put them through the big question mark box and then get out a bunch of answers on the other side. And so how the range of the inputs ends up getting pushed through to the range of the outputs is what we call uncertainty propagation or error propagation. And sometimes it doesn't happen in ways you'd expect. Like, it could be really, really big on your inputs and then end up very small on your outputs, or the other way around, where it's very small on your inputs and somehow ends up very big in your outputs. It all depends on what's happening in that big question mark box in the middle.
Well, and even one step further than that, you might have, like, your machine learning model might be giving you your inputs. And so instead of just giving you a 5 as the answer, if we actually have the uncertainty quantification, we actually have a distribution that we're going to put forward in other pieces of the model. And so like it's like you're losing track of things that you
Yes.
assumed along the way if you're not keeping track of that uncertainty with your surrogate modeling.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you're not keeping track of even how off your surrogate model is, so if you're like saying it's this amount of wrong, sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes your data is noisy enough that it gets swamped out by other things, or you do just such an outstanding job that it is basically the same. And, you'd have to get out like 7 magnifying glasses to tell the difference between the two. But sometimes it does matter. Sometimes your data is just not that informative. So you have like spaces between them where there's just nothing and you're really just uncertain about it. So not understanding what you're missing and what your data is or is not telling you exactly can mess you up as you kind of take that model and run with it and put it into other things.
Perfect. Okay, so this is related to this project, but not specifically. Katie, you taught me everything that I know about sensitivity analysis. And so I was sort of hoping that you could talk about sensitivity analysis again at a TED Talk level so people could follow you and talk about why that's important.
Absolutely. So we're going back to our big giant question mark box where we have things that come in, things that come out. So if you take the thing that goes in and you change it a little bit and then you push it through, so we have one answer, get something out, and then we change it a little bit. And if we get a big change in the output, then we say that that input is very sensitive. So if we change it a little bit or even a lot and then push it through the big question mark box and nothing really changes, then we say it's insensitive. So it's kind of like how much does a change in the input end up mattering to the output? If it matters, if we change it and we see big changes corresponding in the output, sensitive. If we change it a whole bunch, doesn't really affect anything on the other end, it's insensitive.
Well, and why do we care?
And why do we care? So this helps in a variety of different situations. So sometimes it's just what do you want to use your computation power on trying to figure out for your model. So a lot of times we are solving what we call inverse problems. We have this data and we're trying to figure out the settings of the model or the inputs that that correspond to that data that we see. So we see kind of the other side of that and we're trying to figure out what's going on with those inputs. And if some of those inputs really just don't matter at all, then we don't have to think about them. We could just set them to a number and ignore them and not waste our computation time or our mental brain power on trying to figure that out. Other times it's even, say you're designing an experiment and those inputs are the settings or the experimental conditions or something like that. And you want to try to get a lot of information out of that. We're like, oh, we're going to change the temperature. We're going to change the air pressure. We're going to change the type of material that is being used. If, for example, the temperature doesn't matter, then you don't need to worry about controlling it very much. You don't need to worry about varying it very much to figure out, to get like different experiments. Like if the temperature doesn't matter, doing it at 100 degrees and then 90 degrees, 95 degrees, doesn't matter. Don't even do it. So it helps with real world experiments. If we have models for that, we can say, these are the things that matter. These are the things you should try to control. These are the things you should worry about. But then it also matters if we're doing math problems and need to figure out which of those things we should spend our computer power and our brain power worrying about.
Absolutely. Well, and it's not a very practical application, but just to bring it back to AI, and so the sort of the stuff that I talk about all the time, the black box of machine learning and neural networks, like, yeah, that question mark box. The theory would be if we could actually do a sensitivity analysis on all the parameters, you're estimating way too more parameters in your model, and they don't make sense, and none of this is one step, one way to sort of illuminate a part of that black box that we can understand, like this part of it really matters, this part doesn't. And so again, it's not a very practical application just because of the computing power needed to do something like a sensitivity analysis for this. It's not a very easy thing to do. But if one could do it, this is sort of methodology that is working towards illuminating that black box.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that it's something that's needed. I think that a lot of the machine learning and AI models that are out there are kind of not well understood in terms of like what they should look like, what architectures they should have, and figuring out like what's important, what we need to worry about, what we don't need to worry about. And also because we are often talking about really, really big data sets and really, really big models, trying to, again, figure out the things that are important in that are exactly what you said, like opening up the black box and trying to see pieces of that. So not something I have personally used sensitivity analysis for, but a great application. And clearly you were listening when I was talking, when I talked about sensitivity analysis, and I appreciate that.
I did. I used it so many times, Katie. I
And actually, the postdoc you were working with, Ian, like he kind of inherited a little bit of that too, didn't he?
he did. He did. Yeah, well, a few people, because I wrote that code and identifiability as well,
Mhm.
I guess, is
Yep.
the other piece of this coin, which I guess I've mentioned it. We might as well define it. What is identifiability?
Oh, so this goes back to the we have data from the output, we're trying to figure out the input. But sometimes the output doesn't necessarily correspond to unique input. Like there are a lot of different answers or a lot of different things that you could put in to get the same output. So one of a really silly example would be like if you had inputs into your model and this was mapping to like the area of the shape. And so say you're thinking about rectangles and your inputs are length, width, and you also have color. And so you're putting in your length and your width. So not only could there be a lot of different lengths and widths that correspond to getting the answer out. Like if you had 12 as the answer, you could have a 2x6, you could have a 6x2, you could have a 3x4, all of those map to it. And then the color also doesn't matter at all. So even if you did have something unique that would map directly to just the area, the color also could be literally anything. You could have infinitely many options and you would still get the same for your output on that.
And mathematically, that's a problem because we're trying to estimate those individual values. And it's like if you had a ratio and you were just multiplying the top and the bottom by the same number, it would all be equally as good. And mathematically, that causes bad math problems.
It does. And it's interesting that not the people who are doing the analysis, so like the scientists don't always agree with that. They're just like, as long as I get an answer, it's like, yeah, but we care about what these numbers are, or at least we should. Some of them think as long as you get a fit, it's fine. But we want to, a lot of times those numbers are things that are me.
It's
I mean,
never.
they
Oh,
give you an answer once you run into them. You run into it and it gives you an answer or an item.
but the answer is always bad. I mean, that's not true. You do get what you actually want, very sometimes.
If you're bad at the game and in last place.
I'm not in last place. Oh.
No, I'm saying you would get good items if you
Oh.
were in last place. That's
Yeah, well,
how it works.
I never
you get the
am, so
giant
I never
bullet.
get that.
Get the giant bullet. Ask me how I know.
But you don't even have to drive with that one. It does it for you.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. And then like whoever's in first gets super mad. It's wonderful. I love it.
Well, just to wrap up about what we were talking about, I'm very happy that you're leading this problem, Katie, this project, because I do think it's an extension of a lot of the things that you and I have personally talked about for like 6 or more years.
Yeah, and it's something I'm also excited about. And it's interesting that it came about at a time when I was not necessarily thinking about proposing a project, but everyone is so interested in this that I kind of got pushed into it. So this might have been something I sat on for far too many years. It was nice that the community is interested in enough that gave me the like, you need to do this push that it happened.
Well, so I guess just to provide tiny bit more context, the I say over and over again, there's like no good way to get uncertainties on machine learning. And
Mm,
maybe that's an oversimplification. Maybe that's not so true. So there are a lot of methodologies out there that do produce some measure that they're relating calling uncertainties.
mhm.
But they're not what one of the things the project is looking at is do these make sense?
Yeah,
Right, and
yeah.
in what contexts might these be okay enough to use, and what contexts might they be not at all reasonable assumptions. And so I think that practical look at it is really neat because people have been obviously hitting this wall forever that machine learning is a black box. There's no uncertainty quantification, and then they come up with half measures, and it's like, how do you even compare them?
Right. And I think the tricky part of this is what is the right answer? So we have all of these different answers. And in some cases, we're able to kind of design a problem with, data we've made up. So we know what the correct answer is and we know what the uncertainty is supposed to be. But in some cases, it's much, much harder and it's not obvious. So that's where we get into like this weird philosophical, how do we decide what's the correct answer? And it's going to be both practical and maybe somewhat thought provoking to try to come up with that.
Well, we will let you all know as this project continues to go. It's just kicked off. It's only been a couple months that's been going on. Research takes a long time. I've been telling everyone this, so just be patient. But we will let you know what comes out as results come out of that project.
Right. And for those of you on the conference circuit, probably, unlikely to also be attending this talk, but I'll be presenting at least preliminary results at the SIAM Uncertainty Quantification Conference. Amanda is also going to hang out with me and do some speaking related to her work with Real Good AI. Also, the Joint Statistics meeting this summer. I think we're in Boston this year, so that also is another place where if you happen to be on the conference circuit, so if you are a data scientist and are going to some of those, feel free to look us up and hear more.
Awesome. Okay, so now let's shift to talking about AI in general. I mean, and I guess when we're saying AI, we've been talking about AI the whole time, but more we were talking about machine learning. Now the question
For us only that is trained on like information at the lab. And I use it the most to look up things like how many days do you pay for me to be on jury duty and like various policy things like that. Mostly because it is impossible to find. There's not just like an employee handbook where you can do a control find. Like this information is scattered all across this website. And
Right.
that is the thing that I use it absolutely the most for.
Has it lied to you about that? Like, oh, it's totally
yeah.
7 days. Trust me.
I haven't found anything where it's lied explicitly. I did ask it a question about, so it used to be that we had rules on how many years since PhD we could hire a postdoc for. So I was asking questions about that because there's some people applying to a position that I have open. And I'm like, I don't want to like make them go through the whole process of applying if it's really just, you can't do it past 5 years. But I guess that sort of kind of is considered age discrimination. To at least to put it in the posting. So it's like, if you've been doing this for years, why can't you apply for a postdoc position? So I was like, is this just a thing we can put in the posting, or is this a thing that that is actually policy? And so I was looking it up, and they're like, it depends on the posting. So it did not give me a successful answer there. Yeah, so I don't know that it's lied to me. But yeah, sometimes it's not a satisfying answer.
Well,
Well,
honestly, that's a good one for it to be
yeah,
hesitant about.
and that sounds really actually pretty useful. But are they encouraging you to try and use this thing to assist with your actual scientific work as well, or is it? I don't know how clear the mandate is around it.
So I don't think there's a mandate. There have been a lot of efforts to encourage use of AI for coding. So I have someone on one of my projects that's like really leaning into that and has been trying to translate code from Fortran into Python. And this is something that, so whenever people talk about Fortran, I assume you're like coding in the 70s or something.
Yeah.
But I guess part of having these legacy codes for the lab is just that we have this code base that's like never going to die and that Fortran will always be part of our lives. And so this effort was to like, maybe some of these things that are written in Fortran, we could just turn into Python and everyone's happy. And the I'm just going to drop it in and let it go and it's perfect is not the solution that ended up coming out, at least for like some of this codec stuff. So
Interesting.
Right.
Do you come across any researchers who are vibe coding things that you're having to interface with? Vibe coding their analysis or something crazy?
actually, no. Maybe that'll start coming with like the newer hires, but at this point, no. We do have kind of someone who's like a little further along in their career than I am that insists on coding everything in Fortran, which is a choice. But
Yuck.
yeah, yeah, he was even talking to me about like some Bayesian inference stuff, and he's like, "Do you know of like code in Fortran?" I'm like, "No, I don't."
They retired it before I was born.
Right? Yeah, I'd never have touched Fortran and do not plan to. So
My dad, who got a computer science degree in the 70s, I believe, talks about Fortran like it's old, and he hasn't even been doing computer science or coding or anything since the 90s or the
oh
80s
wow,
potentially. But even he is like, ugh, Fortran.
was he a punch card? Was that his era
He
too?
did,
Like the punch
yeah.
cards? Yeah.
Both my parents have computer science degrees, and they have the stories about walking uphill both ways through the snow and then dropping their punch cards and having to reorder 368 cards so you could feed them into the thing and whatever. And yeah, even
Yeah,
they
my
think
dad.
Fortran is old and yucky. That's not good.
Yeah, my dad was one of those too who wanted to be able to run his code more than once because you had to get in a line. So it was like you had to go in the middle of the night if you wanted to like run it and then get a bug and like fix it and then run it again. I'm not sad that those days are gone.
Now you just put your code on the HPC and it runs in the queue without you.
That is true. Or just, leave your laptop and
I'm
let it
always
figure it out.
partial to that, just because then you don't have to write a bash script or anything else.
Yeah, I'm so bad about writing scripts. We have that's one of the big attractions for Lawrence Livermore. I think even at the supercomputing conference, we ended up with multiple machines in the top 10 of those who do the supercomputing rankings. And I'm just like, or I could run it on my laptop.
Right. El Capitan was like #1 or something, right?
Yep. So our biggest one right now, of those who have the rankings or participate in the rankings, we have the fastest computer in the world, which is they're always named after. Yeah. So El Capitan, which is named after
It's
the
the
big
mountain, right?
cliff.
Or the climbing thing. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing in Yosemite. It's like just a like sheer cliff face. Um, yeah, that's what it's named after, and that's our big computer. So right now we're #1. Yeah, it was also funny that I think we got like an email that one of the other computers, like the coolant got flooded like the same day that they were like, we're #1. And then like 2 emails down was like, this one's out because the coolant flooded everything and it's not going well.
Don't let that touch the other one.
Right. Yeah. I'll keep those separate. We do not want those in the same situation. So just keeping us humble.
Totally fair. So, is there anything that you've done lately with AI, or will open up to machine learning, that you think is lately that's particularly cool?
I guess one of the things I was kind of bragging about before we even went full live on the stream, one of the things I think is pretty cool, going back to the squish